I do want to say like one thing that's really interesting about the whole bootcamp thing that I had learned is there's something called imposter syndrome. So that's something basically that you can, sounds really dramatic, but to say suffer, it's where you don't think you're good enough to enter, say, like a new industry. So you're transitioning from one industry to another, but you have this imposter syndrome of, do I cut it out to be a coder? Do I cut it out to be a designer? But that's something that you have to actively work at and push away. It's just kind of your fear kind of taking over. And you just got to work above that and believe that, you know, you are a good designer, you are a good coder, or whatever it is, that the career that you're looking for. Even if
Welcome to the It's Not That Deep podcast. I'm your host, Deepak Sharma, and this week I sit down with Sumit Sekhri, a user experience, user interface designer based out of Vancouver, Canada. Sumit has experience working for various technology companies such as Apple and Shopify and has been immersed in the technology space his entire working career. In this episode, we talk about moving to where the best opportunities exist for your career, getting out of your comfort zone. We talk about pursuing your passions. We talk about the power of boot camps for learning coding and design, UX UI basics. We talk about maintaining a work-life balance that's healthy. We talk about overcoming imposter syndrome, social media and the powers of social media, and we also touch on the fact that he owns a Tesla. We talk about all this and so much more, and I actually really enjoyed sitting down and picking his brain. If you're enjoying this kind of content, please subscribe, leave a rating, share, tell all your friends about it, and consider contributing to my Patreon page. Remember, it's not that deep, and please enjoy the episode. Thank you. Sumit, welcome to the It's Not That Deep podcast, man. Beauty to have you on.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. You're an interesting guy. You're somebody I know who's actually genuinely pursuing his passions. You would go as a UX UI designer, creator.
You got it.
What would I exactly call you? Like, let's elaborate on that title a little bit.
Yeah, so user experience, user interface designer, breaking it down even further. You're just someone who's you're merging technology with what humans want. So that's kind of what it is at the very basics.
Right. Yeah. That's super interesting, man. And I remember on my recent trip to Vancouver, where you live, we actually got to talking a little bit about that and why you got into that, and I found it a really interesting story. So you grew up here in Ottawa, which is,
Yep.
still a great city, but
Yeah.
you took the plunge and you actually left the city, which is pretty awesome. Talk to us about your experience a little bit, growing up here, what it was like, and you went to university here as well.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, spent 28 years born and raised here. Ottawa is kind of all I ever knew up until the age of 28 before I took that kind of plunge and not only left the city as many of our friends and family have, but kind of went all the way, the furthest you could go, I guess,
Yeah.
across Canada.
Yeah, pretty much.
No, it was a hard and difficult decision. I think the hardest point was actually the day you are getting on that flight, and it's kind of maybe the last time, not to be too dramatic, but the last time you kind of see your family for a little while, a few months or
Right.
6 months.
It's not like you just hop on a bus and go to Vancouver. It's a
Right.
far flight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's maybe a 5-hour drive to Toronto, but you're taking a 5-hour plane flight to Vancouver. But ultimately what I did it for was to focus on my career. I really wanted to stay in the world of tech, and I knew if I wanted to grow in that space, it was going to be either Vancouver or Toronto. So Vancouver just came knocking, and I just kind of took it, and been happy with that decision ever since. Kind of never looked back, and
Nice.
to me, I think it was what it's also opened up for me is the ability to now be okay with relocating anywhere, and nothing is really that permanent. You can always change your mind and go back to where you want. You can go back home, but it's just kind of, you become comfortable and you appreciate being uncomfortable, I guess.
Right. Why Vancouver?
I've traveled there almost exactly a year before I moved, and it just blew my mind. Like the beauty of the city, the mountains and the city and the beach, all accessible within 20, 30 minutes,
Yeah.
depending where you live. But it blew my mind. I actually went to Vancouver for the Ottawa Senators, which many of us might be fans of, playing the Vancouver Canucks in this, what they call the Heritage Classic, and went out just for that, made some friends out there, loved the city, and both me and my best friend told each other that if anything changed in our lives, then, and we had the opportunity to move to Vancouver, that would definitely be a destination where we would head out.
That's awesome, man. I got to experience a little taste of that as well. And what you say about the beaches, I mean, the air.
Yeah.
The air is just better there. I got off
Yeah.
the flight. I'm just like, do my sinuses clear up? Like, is everything just a bit better here? And I loved it, man. And it's crazy that it's in our country. It's here in Canada. And, like, what you said was really powerful. You get very used to Ottawa. It's
Yeah.
everything you know. This is it. You could live a decent, comfortable life here. There's some nature here. There's,
Got no park.
yeah, we got a couple of hills and stuff like that. But then you go out to Vancouver and you just see, you drive a few hours here in Whistler.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, we went to Joffrey Lakes and we got
Beautiful
to do a
lake.
little hike there and see the glaciers melt and then the mountain backdrop and all this. Like, I just find everyone in Vancouver is just more active, a little bit more outdoorsy, a little less, I just want to stay inside. And that's not only a product of the weather and what the city is, but I just think, like, the way the city's set up, like, I never saw bike infrastructure like that. Like, you can comfortably get by living in that city with just your bike.
Right.
I loved the city. It was great. My only beef with Vancouver, the lack of rideshare. There's no, like, Uber or Lyft.
Yeah.
And that pissed me off. I'm not gonna lie. I was upset. I'm like, man, we actually have to hail down a cab. What is this, like 2005? Like, what are we doing?
They said it's coming. They've been promising that for years, and it's fair criticism for sure.
That was my only beef. It was annoying waiting for, like, you'd call a cab and it would come in like 15, 20 minutes or not. It might just not. Or you'd hail one down and they'd just laugh at you and keep driving.
Uber and Lyft to us is like the O train to Ottawa. It's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming.
It's coming.
So,
yeah, man. I think we just officially got it, and I'm not even sure if that's legit. I won't be riding it. But yeah, man. Let's talk about your path to where you got to. How you got to where you are today.
Yeah.
You talk about studying in university at the University of Ottawa. What did you take, and how'd you get to where you are today?
So I think as many of us, at least like in the South Asian community, we get a lot of direction from maybe who is our guidance to start with, but our parents. And so I started in finance, or accounting and finance, I should say, and kind of made the switch to finance partway through. But I definitely enjoyed numbers, and there was some level of interest in business for sure. But something that I think I did myself, which I ignored, was where my real passion was. But I would say to that point, when we're at the age of 18, 19, we're still discovering kind of what we really want to do, kind of where we're at. We don't really understand where we're going to go in the world. So graduated from there. I was working at the Rideau Center, Apple, just down the street from University of Ottawa. But I kind of got my first career break, we could say, when I got a job in tech. So I actually worked in customer support to start, but within there, kind of kept true and kept practicing what I really wanted to do. At the time was learning how to build websites, learning code. I had a friend in university. We had a big 8-hour gap between one of our classes. So we had a morning class and a late night class. Spent the time in between rather than taking that bus all the way home and the bus all the way back. Just learned how to code a little bit, and then kept moving on that passion. So eventually moved into a development job. And that was kind of just did that up until I eventually moved to Vancouver and continued pursuing my passion. So I actually went back to school at the age of 28 and took what a lot of bigger cities are now starting to offer. And I think Ottawa has that opportunity now too, our boot camps. So really fast paced, very intensive. but just a quicker turnaround time than the typical university education.
Right.
And so you're able to get into a brand new career much quicker, and it's kind of a faster paced college experience, I would say.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. With coding, what made you first kind of get interested in that? I know you had that little break and you were kind of interested in the tech world already, but what was it that spoke to you about like learning a language of code?
Yeah, so I think at the heart of coding or even designing or most problems in tech are problem solving essentially. So at the heart of it, that's what you're doing. When you look at a product like Facebook or any software really out there, most of the stuff is the basic principles like you're uploading something, you're saving something, you're updating or you're deleting something. And you have to take those basic functions of a website, let's say, and you're really just interested in the problem solving aspect of it.
Okay. That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
And then starting off, let's say I'm somebody in that situation, and I'm kind of interested in this coding world and programming
Yeah.
stuff. How would you start? What programming language? What would some concrete advice for someone
Right.
who wants to get into the world? How would they go about
I
that?
mean, there's so many different languages to learn out there, so there isn't one that would be, say, catch-all. What I learned in school was the most English-like language that they would say is Ruby, and then the framework for that is Ruby on Rails. So that would be a good way to start if you wanted to kind of read simple. Read most like English, but JavaScript is definitely a really powerful and widely used technology today too. A lot of companies are using that.
Yeah.
But looking for tools and ways to learn that, there are the bootcamp experiences. But if the financial concern is there, then I'm sure there's classes at universities, and you can also go on online courses and self-teach yourself too. So that's definitely a viable method too.
Yeah. Talk to us a bit about the boot camps. How does that exactly work? How do
Yeah.
you like? It's 12 weeks intensive. What do the days look like?
Yeah.
What kind of stuff do you have to take home? I know you had some assignments while we were in Vancouver. Talk to us about it a bit.
So I've done both a boot camp in coding and then I've done a boot camp in design. There's also data science and I think a few other disciplines as well. But what a typical day looks like, usually they start around 9. And I mean, on paper, they say they end around 5 or so. But realistically, you're looking at anywhere, whether you're going home or if you're staying at the campus, I would say between 10 and 12 p.m., depending how well you're grasping all the terminology and the concepts. But intensive, it's 5 days a week, plan for 7, maybe even call it 8. There's a lot of work that kind of goes into it. There's you got all these assignments. It's really the projects that you take them as far as you want to, but because you're usually taking a boot camp for a transition in your career, there's a lot of passion that you put behind all of your work, and that just is what's counting all the hours. So.
And do you find you're surrounded by like-minded people as well? And do you have to work with them a lot? Are you working in teams? Or is it a lot of solo work?
Depending on the boot camp and depending on what discipline you're in, some of it is solo work, some of it is group work. But even within solo work, everyone has a very like-minded mentality, like you said, and you're all kind of, it's a team game in a sense. There's enough jobs for everyone. I don't think there should ever be a fear that through a tech boot camp, are we running out of tech jobs because there's so many people getting into the industry. I think there's work for everyone, and as long as you stick to your passions, there's no problem in also helping everyone as well achieve that.
Interesting, man. And have you found the level of expertise with the teachers, I guess, professors, I don't know what you would call them, industry leaders? I don't know who's teaching you this stuff.
Definitely it's people usually with some sort of background. They might have agency or company experience previously, and they kind of come aboard and maybe they have a passion for teaching as well. So in the 2 different boot camps that I attended, one had agency experience, and the boot camp itself, I believe, is half boot camp and half agency, so they have other work to do on the back end. But in the in the development boot camp, it was purely just the teaching was their role. And so they may have started companies in the past. They either have worked at a company or an agency.
That's awesome, man. I feel like that's probably a really great way for someone who wants to legit just dive in and learn something
Yeah,
like that.
absolutely.
But it is an investment. You have
Yeah,
to you can't be juggling a lot of different things at once and doing that, right?
yeah.
So while you do these boot camps and this kind of stuff, are you working at the same time?
So I have heard of some people have part-time jobs at the same time. Um, I think my advice would always be to have it be have undivided attention for it, only from the perspective that it just takes so much time.
Yeah.
And not only is it time that you have to put into your actual work, but then you need time to rest as well. So your mind
Exactly.
is working at its like kind of highest capability.
Yeah, man, and that kind of brings me into the whole. We chatted before about you're big on work-life balance.
Yeah.
Let's get into that a little bit. And in the society we live in today, it's often glorified that hey, I'm working these 80, 90 hour
Yeah.
weeks. I'm working like a dog. And hours somehow equates to productivity in some people's
Yeah.
eyes. Talk to us about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I read a really good, or listened to a really good book recently, and it's a book called Work Doesn't Have to Be Crazy. The name of the author escapes me, but I know he was a founder of Basecamp, which is kind of a task management tool for companies. But nonetheless, the big message that kind of he was sending was it's not about 9 p.m. the night of, but it's about 9 a.m. the next morning. And kind of what that means is it's really important to put a good day's work in, but there's always another day and there's always another opportunity to continue doing really good work. And I think what a lot of these glorified 80, 90 hour work weeks, it seems like the work might end one day or we have to complete it by a certain time. But I mean, there are certain disciplines and there are timelines to respect for sure. But I think we should be proud of like just doing really good work and not always have to hit like revenue goals or these really high like values for some reason.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot, man, because that's kind of, I think a lot more people are now recognizing that hey, like I don't want to burn out by the age of 25. I want to be able to contribute and continue evolving in not only my career, but continue helping my organization do better in the long term.
Yeah.
But a lot of people and a lot of businesses are set up for short term, revenue projections,
Yeah.
profits. How are we doing? How are our shareholders going to react to these decisions?
Yeah.
We got to work, grind, hustle,
Yeah.
hustle. That mentality. There's a place for it for sure,
Absolutely.
but not at the expense of your own health and your own, being able to do something outside of work.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think at the end of it, at the end of your 30, 45-year work career, you have to have something to show for it, something to be proud of, I think. Because at the end of it one day, not to be really dark about it, but like we don't get to take that with us. So.
No, it's true, man. It's not dark at all. I think people need to hear it. Like, we're all just going to die, and it's
Yeah.
all kind of going to be meaningless.
Yeah.
It's not dark. It sounds like that, but man, it's like,
It's the truth.
it's just the truth. So
Yeah.
do what you can, do the best you can, try to contribute the best you can, but just remember, have fun with this thing, man.
I mean, I think one thing we often forget to measure, and we spend a lot of our, say, early university age up until we're still trying to quote unquote make it in life, and we always want higher pay, and those things are all important, and they're important because it does cost money to kind of pay our bills and live in life. But I think once we hit that moment where we're comfortable and we have the money that we need to meet our needs, it's raising quality of life. And so even if you're someone who's investing money, are you trying to make another million because you just want another million? We get too attached to the number, so when it goes down, we get really upset. But really, this was actually something from someone interviewed by Tim Ferriss, is if it's not raising your quality of life, then you're not really investing right, per se.
I like it. Was that dude who wrote? Oh man,
Yeah.
it's not coming to me. Brown dude, right?
No, I think
Ah.
you're thinking Ramit Sethi.
I was thinking him, yeah,
Okay.
because he has a very similar concept
Yeah.
in his book. It's like just trying to increase the quality of your life is
Yeah.
more important than just trying to reach some monetary goal.
Yeah.
And that's not to say money's not important, but he talks a lot about paying a lot for convenience and certain
Right.
things that for him I would rather pay for someone to cook and prepare my food than making the food, because to me, cooking doesn't bring me happiness. I'm not sure if he said that. I'm paraphrasing a
Right.
lot, but just kind of the concept of like, I would rather pay for my time.
I think
to
it's
open up.
I think what you're trying to say is time is the currency.
Time is
So
the currency.
money is currency, but time is as well, for sure.
And I think it's the more important one because it's way more finite.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of struggle often going back and forth. Like we often say life is short, but then I've always, someone I really follow, Gary Vaynerchuk, always says life is long. So I think
Yeah.
it is. 40 years to go, or 550 or whatnot, is a long time, but also time does like move fast.
It does,
Yeah.
man. It does. You always look back and you think, oh my God, I was just 28, or I was just in high school, or I was just starting university, but it's very easy to look back. Before I forget, I just Googled quickly the name of that book's author is Jason Fried, I think.
Yeah.
So
Fried.
if anyone's trying to look into that book. But yeah, man, work-life balance, super interesting subject. And I want to kind of stay on it a little bit before we move on, because I think the way kind of like, I mean, and you would talk about having South Asian parents and, preaching mantras of work hard, you must work hard. And that sometimes, can result in not the happiest career choice, but chasing money more. And you hear a lot about people becoming doctors and like, oh, I don't even like medicine. But yeah, you're chasing money, and, you could be making a lot, but then you could be making horrible financial decisions, life decisions, health decisions. I see doctors who are some of the most out of shape people.
Yeah.
It's like this funny paradox, man.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's just weird to me that a lot of how Western society is set up is like chasing these targets, chasing this like success at a cost of like your own personal happiness. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's really important to, like, I was someone who realized late, and I'm thankful for having gone through university and studied something totally unrelated, because finance does help you in everyday life, and it's really important. The number of people that I know also that work in finance or accounting, but also don't really have a good gist of how to work with numbers and how to invest and whatnot. It's kind of surprising. Or even just the youth, like I find it really strange that we don't teach saving and investing at a very basic level in high school. And we have these other courses, like even in career services, I think was a course you just don't really know. Like a lot of it we can't apply. We're just too young for that.
No, it's I'm a huge proponent for that, teaching basic personal finance skills in high school, even younger. Let's start teaching kids how to open a savings account at a young age. Why not? What's wrong with that? Your parents could, if you have a setup like this, it's an assumption, but if you have parents who want to reward you for doing some chores and they match every dollar, and put that in a savings account that they can open up. You could be young and open up a savings account. You could learn how to, the power of compounding. I think that's a very powerful mental model that I apply in my life. That's not just financial, but the compounding effect. There's actually a book called that, short little self-help kind of book, whatever, but it's powerful because it just talks about how, like, we know how compounding works, but in relationships, it applies to going to the gym. It applies to just dealing with people. It applies to everything. Like, and the sum of what you invest in, it's only going to snowball. It's only going to get bigger. It's only going to grow. And if you can start these habits at a younger age, you're easing a lot of tension and stress later in life. But we kind of, as a society, are a little bit more obsessed with the inverse of that, which is, and it might not be like in your face like this, but it's like build debt, get as much debt as possible, and like, oh, why don't you just finance this car at this rate? Oh, it's such a good rate, 0%, 1.2% over 72 months, like. for some depreciating asset.
Yeah.
It's just silliness.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. We're not taught these things.
I think
young.
maybe, yeah, that's like really interesting that you say that. I think maybe where that comes from is like we don't like letting money go away from our bank account. We're afraid of also, losing it, and I think that's why a lot of people don't invest is they want instant gratification, and that doesn't really usually come. It's a long-term game. So if you promise someone a certain amount they would have that's greater than what they have now in 4 years, they may do it, but 4 years for some people is a long time, and
Very long.
and so like they want that instant gratification, and that's maybe where the car thing comes from. Like I'll
Yeah.
take debt because you're not taking anything away from me today. I get this thing, and then later on maybe I'll start paying for
I
it.
think it applies to so many things. School. Think about school, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we were all told to go to school. We all went
Yeah.
to school. I'm not hating on school as a
Yeah.
concept, but just how it's set up for a lot of people. And in Canada, we're lucky it's not nearly as bad.
Yeah.
But I've heard of people down in the States racking up like $250,000 for the chance to get a job in their field. It's like you're starting off life on the worst foot possible, and
Starting off with a ton of debt.
people might be paying that off their whole lives.
And like I think that's like rolling it back to the boot camp kind of conversation we had, like education, and we just live in a different time, and some roles and some jobs and some careers definitely require like the basic education that we've gone through, like school, but there are other ways to get to where you want,
100%.
and times are just different, and I think we're just at that point where we're adapting to different ways to get to like that career that we really want.
We're in a weird transitionary period where these traditional kind of systems that have been set up and ingrained in society for so long are kind of, people are starting to realize, hey, this is bullshit. I could take a MOOC, an online what's it called? What's it stand for? Like multiple open source course, something like that. Someone's gonna have to check my shit. But it's just like Coursera or one of these. You could get a full education on some of these websites. Khan Academy.
Yeah.
I was trying to prepare for an interview the other day, and I didn't realize Khan Academy has a whole like career development thing. And I'm watching this like 10-minute video on the best way to answer certain questions that like no one taught me this.
Right.
No, like these like things put me through university, which is so ironic. Like Khan Academy taught me how to do half the calculus equations that I needed to do to pass my courses at Telfer, you know? Like
it's like formal education's being disrupted for sure.
It is, man. I just don't know if it's enough. I mean, a lot of the degrees I don't think require you being present in a lecture hall for 4 years.
Right.
Buying $400 textbooks. It's all just this like the scheme, man. Like I hate to sound like some conspiracy theorist. It's like F the system, because I'm part of it and I benefited from it.
Right.
And I came out the other side, but at what cost, right?
Right. But I think it's because we were put through school, and it's kind of all we maybe knew at the time. But I think there are benefits, like it definitely taught time management and just like becoming an adult and being an adult. And we're only able to understand whether it was good or not because I think we went through it, so we have that opinion.
It's true.
So I mean,
you can't really say if I didn't go, I would have been better.
Right. Yeah,
it's like
it's hard to test.
Yeah, you can't really test that. But at the same time, if you're going on the macro level, I don't think it's for everybody, and pushing everybody down this path of just following this rigid structure. I think it actually should be taught in high school. But it's ironic though, because why would a high school teacher whose salary is dependent on people going into school so they have a job, why would they tell you that there's other things out there that you could do? You might be able to start your own business. You might be able to I don't know, there's so many different options. You might start a trade. You might go into college instead of university. You might forego school altogether and just I don't know, go work under somebody at some company, learn everything from that person as a mentor, and you might learn more.
That could be a way too.
I don't know, there's just so many different paths, and like I guess it's not really presented to us that way. It's kind of just like this rigid you're like a 17, 18-year-old school. You mentioned that you're a 17, 18-year-old student expected to make a decision. Oh, I guess I'm going to do accounting and finance. Like this is it.
Yeah, I mean, you're given a booklet, I think, that has like all the options under the sun, and you're just trying to figure out, okay, what am I interested in, and then you got to put the money forward for all the applications.
Yeah.
I do want to say, like, one thing that's really interesting about the whole bootcamp thing that I had learned is there's something called imposter syndrome. So that's something basically that you can, sounds really dramatic, but to say suffer, it's where you don't think you're good enough to enter, say, like a new industry. So you're transitioning from one industry to another, but you have this imposter syndrome of, do I cut it out to be a coder? Do I cut it out to be a designer? But that's something that you have to actively work at and push away. It's just kind of your fear kind of taking over. And you just got to work above that and believe that, you are a good designer, you are a good coder, or whatever it is, that the career that you're looking for, even if it's accounting or finance. Just believe that you can do it.
It's like the doubt and insecurity kind of creeping in and telling you, I haven't done this.
Yeah.
All these people have been doing it.
Yeah.
They're wired to do it. I'm not.
Right.
I'm stepping into this thing. This wired thing is I'm bouncing with this idea myself in my head, because I don't think I'm a conversationalist. I never thought of myself as somebody to sit down on a podcast and have chats with people. Like it was never really something that occurred to me. And so when I started this, I felt a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, look at all these people out here who are professionals at this and do this. But you kind of just have to push those thoughts aside, just like you said, and just do it.
You become your own barrier of entry into like your own talents.
Exactly, man. It's a lot of that little voice in your head.
Yeah.
So much of it just telling you, you're not good enough.
Yeah.
You're not enough. You're not doing this enough. And sometimes I think in like a very rare time, like it might be right.
Yeah.
It might not be. I might not be a podcaster.
Right.
I might find it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
This experience might help me with the next.
Yeah.
It's just, I think life, and I'm no philosopher or anything, so take my words with a grain of salt. But I feel like life is just, you're building up on top of different experiences, and that's who makes you who you are. People talk a lot about finding themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting concept, because I don't think like you ever really find yourself. I don't think there's one day you kind of just wake up and you're like, I have found who I am. I think it's more creating yourself. And I heard this somewhere, and it stuck with me, because life's just, it's a painting, and you're just painting every day a little bit. You're just adding on to experiences. You're adding another layer. Sometimes you have bad days, and that's still an experience. You take away from that, and like you try to build off that. And without getting too deep, because it's not that deep.
That's really interesting thought, though. Yeah, you kind of are. I mean, I was gonna say, just try things, like try what you're into. Try whatever. I mean, as a child, I really wanted to play in the NHL. If I didn't go play, house league hockey, I would have never known, maybe, and I would have always thought. But, I realized really early on I wasn't. I started too late. Like, grade 7 was too late. But I think you got to try different things.
Gary Vee talks about that a lot. He's like, if you're a 20-year-old out there right now, you don't know shit, go try a bunch of shit. And it's like, it's so pure, that message. And he's not trying to put anyone down. He's literally saying, go out, try things, see how you feel. If something, you're doing it and it kind of lights a bit of a fire, try doing that a bit more. That's not to say this is it. Try it, do it more, try other things.
And I think that's like when I first realized like what my passion was, like without knowing that it was my passion, was just taking different classes in high school. So I tried like a computer graphics class. I took a yearbook class, just a few others, continued that over the years. And then I didn't go to school for it. But here I am 10 plus years later. It's all kind of come back, and I've discovered like, okay, what I can't ignore, what keeps kind of knocking at your own door inside, is what you ultimately want to do, I guess, like for a living. And that can change, and that's okay. You can practice one career for 5-10 years, then you can go practice something else and constantly
talk to us about those courses, that yearbook course, that other course. What was it called?
I think it was just called yearbook.
Okay,
I don't remember, back in elementary, I think it was, or high school. But yeah, there was a graphics design class. I just remember a computer lab with Max, and probably like one of our first interactions with Max. But
were those the fat ones?
Yeah, the ones with the color.
Yeah, I remember those.
They're always changing. I think
some were blue, some were like green. Yeah, I remember those.
And they kept changing with time, but I just remember playing with different Adobe software, Photoshop, Dreamweaver, and that's where I started making websites. But for me, it was always spending extra time on every project, always asking for an extension because I just wanted to push my own personal learning further. I just genuinely enjoyed it, and kind of played with it on my own time at home. Like, would always have that version of Adobe Suite on your computer,
Yeah.
and it just never, I guess, like left me. And so finally, like, I wanted to learn that, get some formal education, like the theory and philosophy behind design, so I'm able to jump into the industry and, again, like we talked about, put away that imposter syndrome. But I think the big thing is, the big takeaway was, put your work out there, get some feedback from others, and you'll grow. You got to be a little vulnerable.
Yes, that's a big thing, man.
Yeah.
You have to be able to put yourself out there a little bit, and it's hard because all those doubts and that little voice is going to come back in your head and say, man, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Who's going to look at your website? Look at all these way more
Right.
smart, talented, accomplished people out there who've
Yeah.
already done it. That's all bullshit, man. So
And that's what we think. Originally, we're going to get a bunch of negative comments, but we'll all be so surprised. You put out your first podcast, you put out your first post on Instagram, and it might be design related, and just the amount of people that give you that positive affirmation is
yeah,
just gives you a different high.
it fires you up, man.
Yeah.
But that's another thing that, okay, this is where it's hard for me to relate with Gary Vee on, because he talks a lot about, I don't care about those positive voices just as much as I don't care about the negative voices. Like, he claims to be at least completely neutral on this.
Right.
But me, I love those positive voices. Yo, that shit's hype, man.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you for all the support. And like, but it's very true though, because as soon as you get a negative, yo, what the fuck you doing, bro?
Yeah.
Yo, you know your numbers guy or die. I don't know. Someone says some bullshit, and you're gonna listen to that. You're gonna hear it. You're gonna be like, man, the fuck is this guy on? Like, what's he talking about? But you're still gonna hear it. So I don't know where I was going with that, but it's very true. Like that, you have to be vulnerable. You have to ignore the voices and just put your shit out there, man.
Yeah.
If it's something you actually stand behind, just put it out and see what people think.
Yeah, and I think what he maybe means by like keeping a neutral stance on like his positive and negative is like he doesn't let the positive get himself too relaxed.
Too high, yeah.
And just kind of sit back and not continue innovating on his stuff.
Yeah.
But not getting in the negative and then doubting yourself.
Yeah.
Like either.
Yeah.
So
Don't be too emotionally invested in it.
Yeah.
Try to be a little bit more objective. Put your things out there, but
I mean, if you believe in your craft, then keep going forward, because even some of your closest friends might give you some feedback that you may disagree with, and if you truly like, be open and take that feedback in. But if you truly believe in it some way, like, then just continue.
That's awesome, man. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about UX UI, what it actually is and how it applies to daily life for people out there who might not know what it's about at all.
So I mean, to really like maybe break it down so everyone can relate, like I watched this mini documentary, and it was on the design of doors. So if you think about, we've all obviously gone through doors on both ends, and thinking some doors say push, some say pull, some have different shapes of handles, and that's the design of everyday things. And question yourself, like, is a door a good design? Like a car door, we always understand. We always know we got to pull the knob, and it's always going to come the same way. It's never going to go inwards. But in like offices and stuff that we've been in, some open both ways, and you never know like how you interact.
You almost have to do that little to pull. Yeah.
Sometimes you run into a door because you expect it to go straight through. So that's kind of design at like very ground level, but practicing in tech, which is what I plan to do. It's more like product design and digital design. So it's how app interacts with people, kind of how they feel while they're using it, but also, is it easy for them to use?
I like that a lot, man. And I remember you talking to us while we were out at dinner. We were talking a little bit about just like everything from the fonts that people use to how people swipe through an app and just everything. It's things we as just the end user don't think about. It's not something we actively think about, but you're always thinking about it. Talk to me about some examples of some things that might not blow people's mind, but just you might become a little more cognizant about it.
Yeah. So I mean, It's becomes more apparent when you put multiple colors and multiple fonts kind of together, or side by side, I should say. And if you ever see those like things on the internet where, imagine if Coca-Cola and Pepsi swap colors and swap symbols or whatever, how would someone feel? So like we know a brand to be a certain color and a certain shape. That's just branding over time, but fonts and typography are all to kind of bring out this certain emotion. So something maybe we've all used, Airbnb, it is that orangey red for a reason because it kind of brings out a certain mood. It was really, I don't know, let's say like
Homey?
yeah.
Yeah.
And if it was like black or if the app was really dark, yeah, it wouldn't kind of feel very inviting.
Yeah. Same with Uber. You were talking about like their font is that font for a reason.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know what that reason is, but it makes you, I guess, associate it with this service. This,
And
this
like
thing's gonna pick me up and drop me off. I don't
yeah.
know.
But like at the heart of it all, like they've got a team that people sit together and it might be for days and days and they just go back and forth on the ideation of like what does the brand like need to look like even for my own kind of project that I worked on through the 12-week boot camp, I've sat through like this font library and I narrowed down like 300-400 fonts down to like maybe 8. Finally brought that down to like 4, and then you test them all out and you notice things like the T is too sharp, the U is too round, or
I'm really
little
bad
things.
at this, bro. I suck at this because I started out when I started off my podcast. I had this font called Permanent Marker.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen it.
yeah,
I thought it was dope.
yeah,
Like, this is sick. Looks kind of
yeah,
goofy and funny. And I literally got feedback from people, good friends of mine,
yeah.
who were like, don't fucking use this. This is not like this does not look professional at
Right,
all. It looks like a joke. Like you're putting out these captions that are all serious and it gives off a joke. I'm
right,
like, oh shit, okay. So I change it. I go to like Helvetica. I'm like, dude, get more feedback. This is so boring.
right.
Everyone uses Helvetica
Yeah,
for everything. I'm like, bro, I just don't get this font stuff. There's hundreds, there's thousands of
there's
them.
so many.
And I'm just going through, like, now I'm overthinking every font that I put for every caption of
Yeah,
every video. I'm just like, how are people going to
yeah.
respond with this? And I just suck at it. It's not my area of expertise.
For me, like it started with what we call a mood board and an inspiration board, and again going back to the emotion you want to convey. And then it's like, okay, like when you put it all together, your colors and your fonts, does it match like, the hominess of Airbnb or like, the transportation of Uber or whatever it might be. So I remember being a kid though, like kind of similar, you'd just download these random fonts like, ooh, that's a Star Wars font because I might need this one day.
Yeah.
But you have no need for it ever. But
No.
it was just fun to download fonts back in the day.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And like importing them into like Final Cut Pro and me, I'm like playing around
Yeah.
with just putting them on different sizes for different like an Instagram story versus an Instagram post,
Yeah.
and making sure that the font doesn't cut off when I
Yeah.
make it a preview. These are just things I never had to think about
Yeah.
when I was just Snapchatting my food, you know.
Yeah.
So going from being the the consumer to the producer
Yeah.
of the content, it's been kind of a massive mind shift for me, and just like, okay, whatever I'm putting out, it's like. And this is the power of social media, which is kind of like the next thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. But like everything that I put out, and this is not to sound like cocky or anything, like I ain't
Yeah.
shit yet, but everything that I put out, hundreds of people are engaging with it, and it's like I'm sitting in a room with them when they
Yeah.
click a story or when
Yeah.
they see a post, even though I'm not in the room
Yeah.
with them. When someone's watching this, it's like
It's
I'm
personal.
engaging with them. It's personal to
Yeah.
them, however they consume it, and it's almost like a responsibility in a weird way. It's like I want to give them the best experience that they
Yeah.
can possibly have, that I can control in this situation. So whether it be a tweet or a Facebook post or something, it takes time, it takes energy. You
Yeah.
actually have to think about how am I going to be, and I'm not good at this yet.
Yeah.
I'm still experimenting and trying different things and stuff like that. But let's talk a little bit about like the power of social media and just how people are a fly on the wall. They're going to be watching
Yeah.
this conversation. They're going to feel like they're here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit.
Social media is it's a crazy thing. I mean, I've got my love and hate for it. So I practice photography as one of my hobbies and in my free time. So there used to be other places to put out your photography, but they're not really popular anymore. And again,
Like
it's not a
Flickr, like
yeah, Flickr,
yeah.
Facebook used to be a place you
Uh-huh.
post your photos, and some people still do, and that's fine. But it's Instagram's kind of become the go-to spot to get that like feedback from like the general face or Instagram population and your friends and family. Um, I battle with like whether I care for the likes or don't. Obviously, they've kind of hidden them at least for Canada and maybe the U.S. But to
Right now
me,
it's
I
just Canada, I think.
okay,
Yeah.
and for me, it's more like that challenge from I guess a marketing standpoint. Like, can I get my engagement higher than last time? Um, but that's I mean I know a lot of tech companies right now, like their whole angle has become like tech health. So, like ethical uses of how tech and how often we spend on these apps. So I
Screen
think,
time's a big thing. It's a
yeah.
huge feature on Apple iOS now.
And if you think about like when I was 18, like I had a phone when I turned 18,
Yeah.
and obviously no apps back then. But
You had to text with the
yeah, T9,
7777. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I wonder how many people know what T9 texting is now, right?
Yeah.
It's funny to talk about, but yeah, it's like things have changed like so much.
And they're going to continue to change.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. If you were to have kids today, would you limit their use of Instagram? Would you let them have an account if they're, let's say, you have a 10-year-old right now?
Yeah.
Would you let him have Instagram or him or her have Instagram because all their friends have Instagram? Or would you be like, no, man, you're too young for this app.
Yeah.
It has psychological impacts. You compare yourself to others. It can allow you to, compare your life to others. They're only posting the best parts of their
Yeah.
day, right?
Yeah. It definitely becomes like that kind of stereotypical of like, oh, he has it, she has it, I want it too. Like when it was just about toys, and now it's just more visual. Like I've got a bunch of younger cousins that have Snapchat and whatnot. Like on one hand, like they are the target market with all these like new apps coming out, but it's I would want to say maybe like apply the same method I had. Didn't have a phone or a device till like 18, but that might be short-sighted and like who knows what it's like. Like, can you actually stop your kids
I'm
from
not sure,
having
man.
like a
I
device?
remember you talk about that cell phone. I remember when I got my first cell phone, I had like this brick Nokia,
Yeah,
and I think it limited the number of texts I could send, like the plan,
yeah,
and I had to make calls after 6, and I had to
yeah,
all these
yeah,
weird games
yeah,
that now it's all eliminated,
yeah.
and now I think the only barrier is how much data you have.
Right.
That's pretty much the only thing that really matters now, and I think that soon won't even be a thing. Imagine
Yeah.
when 5G comes around and
Right.
becomes the infrastructure, like you can't have limits on
Yeah.
the data because one Netflix movie will destroy your
I
whole.
think also our era, we were both like more computer people too. We just hopped on MSN and
Yeah.
like whatever else was
Oh,
around
yeah.
back then. So that was our like I guess communication. But I definitely believe like there is some sort of negativity. We spend more time looking at a screen than we do just spending like outside.
Yeah.
And like so many kids do that or always have iPads with them.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, there's got to be something negative about that.
No, there definitely is. I'm not saying that I'm not part of it.
Yeah, no.
I use it and I love it and it's great. But I think we're also one of the last generations to have lived before that. And so I
Yeah.
think we're a little bit more, we recognize, hey,
Yeah.
man, let me just turn my phone on airplane mode and
Yeah.
go do this hike or
Yeah.
go do this thing or whatever. We're a little bit more aware of the impacts. And I think a lot of people go on these kind of social media cleanses.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a big thing. If you want to start a business right now, open up a detox center for social
Right.
media. You lock up people's phones or
There's
some
like-
shit, go on a retreat. I don't know.
Then there's like tech retreats. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
I'm
just,
pretty.
you just don't bring your phone or whatever it is. You put it in a basket. I mean,
You probably
How-
feel great after.
yeah, but does it feel kind of sad to say that we feel great like after we put our phone away from even when you go to a comedy show?
Yeah.
Your
They
phone has
lock
to
it
go in
up,
a
yeah.
lock bag for 2 hours, 3 hours, and you come out saying like that was great. Like I didn't. Sometimes you just pick up your phone just because
Yeah.
out of habit.
Oh, dude, I'm in a lineup at a grocery store before
Yeah.
before this podcast, and I'm just like, God, this lineup's so long. Let's just go on Instagram.
Yeah,
I didn't think this was
Yeah.
not my thought process. I just did it.
yeah.
I checked my email at the same time. I flipped over. What's Facebook saying? I
Yeah.
don't care what anyone's saying on Facebook, but I'm on it.
To that point, Aziz Ansari, the comedian, said a really kind of cool statement once. He was like, if you skip a day on your social media, Facebook, let's say, and do you print out and bind together like the previous day or week's like worth of Facebook posts and read it? It doesn't matter. It's
Yeah.
not like the newspaper, and
Yeah.
you could skip a month and you wouldn't have missed anything impactful.
It's the information diet
Yeah.
that we kind of have to become a little bit more aware of, just collectively. Like me personally, I don't watch the news.
Yeah, same.
I have no need for it. It's mostly negativity, and it just doesn't.
Yeah.
Most of the time, 99% of the time, does not affect my day-to-day life
Right.
at all. There is a place, to be aware about world issues and whatnot, and that's fine. But man, I
But
just
there's other
don't.
ways to get that information.
There's other
out,
ways
too.
to get that, exactly. It's this delicate balance though, man, where like we're in an ever connected society. You can hit up anybody at any time, anywhere across the world.
Yeah.
We don't need to get a calling card to make a
No.
long distance phone call. What the hell happened to that industry?
Yeah.
I could just WhatsApp someone from like China or
Yeah.
anywhere, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
maybe not China. I'm not sure if they have WhatsApp. I think they have
But nonetheless,
WeChat.
like,
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so it's like, I don't know. We're so connected, but I don't think people have ever been more lonely. Like,
Yeah.
I actually think it's an epidemic. Like, you see all this mental health issues and stuff like that. Like, I'm no expert on this stuff. I have no qualification to actually talk about it. But just from the standpoint of like, people having anxiety and depression and all these different disorders, I don't think that going on social media and all these apps and all these cool things that are making our lives better
Right.
and more efficient is actually helping that issue.
Right.
So I'm not sure the future. It's going to be very interesting to see how
Yeah.
governments deal with it as well, because I don't think government organization is the answer either.
Yeah.
Because who's to say that? I mean, you saw that Mark Zuckerberg going in front of the Senate or
Yeah.
something. Dude, there was a joke. They didn't even understand like what Facebook really
Right.
was or what
Right.
it was about.
Yeah.
So do you want those guys making laws of how
Yeah.
we should use social media? I don't know. I don't have the answers.
Right.
It's kind of the Wild West right now, but
Yeah.
you see Europe putting some more consumer protection laws in and stuff like that.
It's a changing time.
But it's just, I don't know where it's going to go. The future of it is very interesting, man.
Yeah.
But coming back to the whole information diet thing, what are some practical things you do in your daily life to kind of stay focused, stay on task on things that are important to you, and get in your flow state?
So, I mean, I'm constantly working at it as well. I wouldn't say like I'm perfect. Would say I'm pretty far from perfect, but I think something I'm trying to practice is just waking up early. Like, and then my struggle with waking up early is not the waking up part. It's getting to bed on time.
Yep.
But I just think you got to find like your optimal time where you work best. So, that could even be early in the morning and late at night. So just finding a way to make that work. It's going to be different for everyone though, because you got different commitments. So if you work a typical 9 to 5, then you got to find something that kind of works around it.
Yeah.
And other things too, like going to the gym, like that, I find that energizes me. So I'm trying to do that in the morning as well, too.
Nice.
And eventually like find that optimal kind of flow space for sure.
I like that. I like that a lot, man. Just, those are practical, actual
Yeah.
tips for how to do it. I like that a lot. You also are a coffee fanatic. You
Yeah.
like coffee as well, so I'm sure that helps with your early mornings. Talk to
Yeah.
us briefly a little bit about that. What's some of your favorite coffees? Let's lighten the mood a bit.
Yeah.
What kind of coffee do you drink? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, Vancouver is a huge coffee culture. I think it kind of comes from being just north of Seattle, where Starbucks kind of started out. Not a paid promo there, but no, actually wasn't a big coffee person until oddly enough, like my first startup job. We had a big like kind of espresso machine there, so I was taught how to make I think lattes back then. So that's where it started for me. I didn't originally like the taste of coffee. It was actually despised it a little bit, but
Most people do. It's so bitter, and it's
Yeah.
like, why would I drink this?
and then I guess like once you started making lattes and mixing in some milk and whatnot, it just I kind of really got addicted to it. I just now love the taste of it. So, We got a bunch of shops in Vancouver that I love. Like we've talked about it off air, but kind of my favorite shop is in San Francisco. Um, it's called Blue Bottle, and like they just initially I was actually another podcaster who ended up getting a job at Google Ventures, and they invested in Blue Bottle Coffee,
Yeah.
and it was just weird to me. Why would Google be investing in a coffee shop? So
Yeah.
I kind of went there on that premise, but fell in love and just was like the best tasting coffee I've ever had.
That's sweet, man.
Yeah.
I gotta try it out.
You do.
Yeah, I gotta check it out for
Yeah.
sure. We have some coffee shops here in Ottawa and
Yeah.
in this area as well, but it's nowhere near that level, man. And when I hit up Seattle as well, I saw that that was a thing.
Yeah, it's
That's a
huge
big
culture.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
love that. Um, I wanted to ask you. You mentioned podcasts a bit. What are some of your favorite podcasts to consume? How do
Yeah.
you consume them? And yeah,
Well, it is NFL season's back, so definitely a couple of those fantasy football podcasts have made it back onto my list.
nice.
There's like a Yahoo fantasy football podcast, but definitely a lot of like motivation, self-help ones. I've listened to Jay Shetty podcast. There's also the Gary Vaynerchuk podcast. Got a couple cool design ones. There's one from Adobe called Mixed Methods. So anyone looking to kind of find some design related podcasts, I knew I had to ask for those too. There's a really good one from a company called Envision called Design Better.
Okay.
They talk a lot about a lot of different topics in design, and could just be company and company structure and kind of workflow as well. So those are cool. And finally, there's just a couple fun ones, like one's called Reply All and one's called Why'd You Push That Button? And they actually talk about some of these social media kind of nuances and kind of what would you do and how do you use this app and that type of thing.
I like that a lot, man.
Yeah.
I gotta add that one to the list. It
Yeah.
sounds super interesting when you told me about it before. Yeah, man. Podcasting, it's an interesting world, man, because you can literally learn things while you're driving,
Yeah.
while you're at the
Yeah.
gym, while you're doing dishes,
Yeah.
while you're doing whatever you want. What's your favorite way to consume?
Definitely driving in
Driving.
the gym. And if I'm taking the train back and forth to work or school, like there, I've got a good half an hour like each way as well. So
That's awesome, man.
yeah.
You're probably a little too humble to bring this up, but you do own a Tesla. Let's talk about this a bit, man, because
Yeah.
I think the viewers would love to hear about what that's like, what
Yeah.
made you buy one, how the experience has been, and yeah.
I mean, it kind of became, I think, a dream car of mine. I think it's a dream car for like a tech nerd. I'll
Oh
say.
yeah.
So it's like I guess like just an iPhone on wheels in a sense. But yeah, I used to be someone who I think I always wanted something that was like different, that wasn't like mass market. I mean, obviously a Tesla is mass market, but it used to be kind of like an Aston Martin or something. But as you get older and you kind of want to be responsible in a sense too, you just kind of realize like those things like the maintenance on like a gas vehicle like that are just horrible. So also just getting more inclined with okay, like electrical vehicle, it's kind of the future. It's a good thing to be green as well.
Yeah,
You know, why
it's
not?
not only the future, man. Like I watched this documentary. I think it was "Who Killed the Electric Car,"
Right.
and the first
Yeah.
ever like car made cars like models
Yeah.
were all electric.
Right.
And then obviously all the oil and gas companies and whatnot, and the car companies came in. Were like, fuck all that. Like we
Yeah.
have all this profit we could make, and then little cities were like redesigned to accommodate highways, freeways, cars instead of trams, electrical
Right.
systems, and electric cars.
Yeah.
So I think the car should have always been electric. And imagine what the technology would be
Yeah.
at today if that had been the case.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great step in the right direction. I'm one of those people who dreams about having a
Yeah.
Tesla. I can't wait until I get even like by the time I can afford
Yeah.
one, there's even more mileage per charge, and
Yeah.
they work out some of the kinks. It
Yeah.
can drive itself completely. It's
Yeah.
already almost pretty much there, which is nuts, man.
Yeah, it's there on the highway for sure. And
Yeah.
it just makes the experience so much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I think you just get like less tired too. Like I've done it from Seattle back to like Vancouver and just let it like it was raining really hard one day, and I think the car could see better than I could see, so I just let it do its thing. And for
Jeez.
sure the first few times it's a little nerve wracking because it's this brand new technology. You're letting it like do the driving for you.
Yeah,
But,
man.
no, I think it does it.
But
really
the
good.
argument is, like, to me at least, like, and all the statistics show that it's safer than a human.
Yeah.
It's
Better
it's
reaction
working
time.
way harder and
Yeah.
faster at all times.
Yeah. Six
Uh,
pairs of eyes or whatnot.
yeah, that's nuts, man. And I can't wait until self-driving cars expands way beyond that.
The most kind of goosebump thing that I've heard was Lexus had a commercial, and I think it may have been around the Super Bowl or whatnot. But they said in the commercial their tagline was "Drive while you still can," and
Ooh,
that kind of sat deep with me. I was like,
that's kind of eerie.
they might ban like a steering wheel in a vehicle at some point in the
Holy
future,
shit.
5-10 years from
I never
now.
thought about that.
Yeah,
That's creepy.
like
I
we
don't-
know we can drive, and a lot of us enjoy actual driving.
Yeah.
Like I will still drive and whatnot. 'Cause
It
it's
might
fun.
be. It might become like a private license thing.
Yeah.
Like you'll have to actually like. It might. Oh my god. that
But if
might
the
be-
car doesn't have a steering wheel, let's say, just 4 seats, 6
But then, what are we
seats.
gonna do with all the existing cars that are on the road right,
Right,
now?
yeah.
Like people aren't just gonna give up their cars. Like it's like asking for people to turn in their guns.
Right.
But this is way more personal and has way more utility.
Yeah.
This is something that people rely on a
Yeah.
day-to-day basis. You have cars from the 1970s and 60s that
Yeah.
people are still driving,
Right.
still working.
Yeah.
So I don't like it. It's definitely a little creepy to
Yeah.
think about that, and definitely one day, I don't know when,
Yeah.
that's a possibility that steering wheels are not a thing. But I think that's a little bit more Black Mirror
Yeah.
than than reality,
But
because
even I think Paris, I think, is one of the cities that have come out, and I know Vancouver has an initiative. I want to guess it's around the year 2040. They want to go all green by then.
that's amazing.
And-
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's the same question of where do all the gas vehicles go? What do you do with them?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe you trade it in for a credit towards a
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe a yearly subscription. Like people probably won't need to own cars, right?
Yeah.
It'll probably be a select amount of companies that
Yeah.
have a fleet of these, almost like an Uber. I think the best example could
something
be Uber.
Tesla
right?
wants to do it as well. I think it's called like Tesla Taxi or something, where you take your existing car, you can put it on their network, and once it's able to fully self-drive, it will act like Uber but with no driver, and it picks up
That's
and drops off
nuts.
people. So while you're working,
Yeah.
say 9 to 5, or even at home working on your creative stuff, and your car's driving around making you money.
Yeah.
So now you buy one, you buy 3, so on and so forth.
I think
You
the,
know
the most realistic way to be able to do that right now, and I don't know if there's technology out there that do this, is to outfit your existing vehicle
Right.
to self-drive.
Yeah.
I don't know if that could be a thing. It's definitely not electric, but I don't know. Maybe someone out there
Might be
comes up with
possible. Yeah.
something that's like, take your Civic and like, hey
Yeah.
man, we're just gonna make it drive itself somehow.
Yeah.
Cruise control's there, so
Yeah.
just a
You're
few more,
halfway there.
just a few more sensors.
Couple
and whatnot.
GoPros.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's very interesting to talk about future, this kind of stuff. What do you think is like an industry that's bound to be disrupted very soon in the near future?
I mean, like banking's being disrupted. I think
Yeah.
right now, like fintech is pretty big. Wealth
You
Simple.
got Cash App, you got
Yeah.
Venmo, these kinds of big ones. Kind of.
It's kind of, I guess, like where AI and like data science is gonna go next. Trying to think what industry will get disrupted next.
You don't have to have an answer because it's so open-ended, right?
Yeah.
But just like if you were to
So-
take one industry right now that you just think is just so inefficient, like this is just done so horribly. To me, I think one thing that's going to be disrupted, me personally, is voting. Just it's not an
Yeah.
industry, but it's how it's something that's part of most democracies.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't vote. A lot of people
No, it's
don't
true.
want to go sit in a lineup, so maybe blockchain voting or some kind of method for you to be able to
Yeah.
securely vote from your phone or something. I don't know how it's gonna
Yeah,
work.
that'd be really
I'm not
cool,
the
though.
I'm not the guy, but there's definitely
It's-
something that needs to be changed because I don't want to go stand up in a line.
Yeah.
I might advance vote through the mail because I'm that lazy. Like,
Oh, I think it's just like like the younger generation is just not in tune with what's going on. A lot of us don't have cable, so we don't hear the debates and we don't look for them. So I think,
and even if you do watch it, what are you really taking away from it?
Right.
Like, it's
Yeah.
It's all orchestrated.
Yeah.
It's like,
And it's mostly just marketing messages. It's a
Yeah.
commercial in a debate form.
yeah,
And then, I mean, I know when I had to go vote for the first time, I didn't understand the process because you're voting for someone in your neighborhood, which ultimately votes for what party you want to
Yeah.
put in. But I mean, yeah, that's a whole thing.
it's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, I think, what is it called? First past the post system here in Canada,
Yeah.
something like that. I remember I went like to wait in line, and I got really close to go, and they're like, well, "You need 2 pieces of ID." I'm like, "Well, I got 1,
Yeah.
so I can't vote." It's like, "No, you need 2." I'm like, "All right, bro." I left. I didn't vote.
Yeah.
I'm not proud of this, but I was like, I'm not gonna go back, get my ID, come back, and
just,
wait in line again. So I
yeah.
remember, like, right then and there, I was like, there needs to be a better way.
Yeah.
But there's so many industries and stuff that like are just like, come on, man, you
Yeah.
could do this better.
Blockchain's like a huge thing. I mean, I understand maybe even less than 1% of it, but what I do understand, I guess it's just like a secure transfer of information. So, yeah, applying that to voting would be super, super cool. I would love to be able to vote from an app, a phone. Like, I mean, I guess the same way you log in to see your taxes, why not vote the same way?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why not. Do you participate, without getting into too much detail, into these e-coins,
Crypto, yeah.
cryptocurrencies and stuff like that? The word wasn't
honestly,
coming to me. Thanks.
Yeah, honestly, haven't really believed in it. Like, I believe in the
The underlying technology.
underlying
Yeah,
technology.
but not the exact.
Not a specific coin itself. I believe in it. This is what I heard once: is if you can't use it for everyday items, then really what is its true value? Like, if you can't use a coin like at say Tim Hortons or whatever to get your morning coffee,
Uh-huh.
then how do you how
Right.
do you assign a value to it? So
Right, but I mean, playing devil's advocate, when someone at one point in history, they probably went from a gold coin
yeah,
to a piece of paper, and people probably thought that piece of paper is absolutely ridiculous, and then for the longest time they phased the paper in, but it was backed by
Right.
gold, and then it was no longer backed by gold, and now we all just use the paper
right.
and
I-
trust the paper.
I think
you-
because
yeah.
crypto just doesn't have something to back it. It
Right.
was kind of like a stock in the sense of whatever the previous person is willing to pay for it. So
Yeah,
I mean, it's seen kind of a mini crash, I guess, or just kind of like leveled out. I mean, I just need some sort of like foundation. I think we will go towards like some sort of digital currency. Actually,
e-currency. Yeah.
a friend told me recently where we've got something like $60 trillion dollars in the world, but only 6 trillion is actually physical.
Oh, wow.
So about 54 trillion or 85% is already kind of just digital
Yeah.
numbers in our bank accounts. But
That's a crazy stat. I did not know that,
Yeah.
man. Shout out to the fractional reserve system, man. Lending out money that does not exist. Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think more people need to learn about these kinds of things, and someone's going to come up with a way for us to actually use it as an exchange of
I
value.
think so.
Yeah,
Eventually.
I just don't know how.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, man. Is there anything in our chat that I didn't really cover that you're interested in, that you're passionate about, that you want to discuss, talk to the viewers about?
I think we've actually covered quite a bit more
Yeah.
than I thought we've uncovered. And it's been really great chatting.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
It's great to have you on the
Yeah,
podcast,
thank
but
you.
we're not done just yet. We're going to do a lightning round
'Kay.
before I let you go. Just a few questions. Don't feel rushed to answer, but, try to keep it pretty
Yeah.
succinct. So the first question that I have for you is, what's your favorite NFL team?
I got to go with the Atlanta Falcons.
Atlanta Falcons. You like that Julio Jones getting
Yeah.
paid? I love Julio Jones. I like the Falcons. Not a huge Matt Ryan guy.
Okay.
I just feel like he's
Fair
very inconsistent. Great quarterback, but Matt Ryan, man, he flopped when it mattered against my Pats. That's a good answer. What's one thing you think everybody overlooks about app design?
I think people definitely overlook the spacing between elements.
Okay, so if you have things too close to each other.
Yeah, it's kind of the grouping and breathability of like content.
Nice. I like that word, breathability. It makes a lot of sense. You're swiping through an app or something. You don't want it to be cluttered and
Yeah.
too much going on.
Yeah,
You
gotta-
might not use the app as much.
your eyes got to be able to scan things easily and read things easily.
I like that a lot. What's a bad piece of advice out there that you hear people giving younger folks?
Ooh, bad advice. I think in like bigger cities like San Francisco, Vancouver, Toronto, where like housing is really expensive, making such a like a highly held goal that you have to buy like a house. I
You
think
must own property or
yeah.
you didn't make it.
If you're always taught that, I mean, the numbers don't always make sense to do that. So.
Yeah, I like that answer. Um, what is your favorite late night eats in Vancouver?
Favorite late night eat?
Your go-to spot, man. Where
I mean, it may not be open past 9, but got a shout out to Down Low Chicken.
Down
I think,
Low Chicken.
you got to visit it while you were there.
I'm pretty sure I did.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome, man. I recommend it as well. I'm not sure if it's open late, but still answers the question. Last and final lightning round question before I let you go. Any advice for a 17-year-old version of yourself?
Yeah, definitely go after, kind of as cliche as it might sound, but like whatever you're passionate about. So kind of the subject that you're most interested in. Even if you don't go to school for it, just keep practicing it in your free time and just work at that.
Love it, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Can't wait to have you back on the
Yeah,
podcast.
thank you
This
for
is a
having
great
me.
discussion. And just remember, it's not that deep. Thanks, bro.
Thanks.
I really enjoyed that conversation with Sumit, and I hope you did as well. I hope you got some value from it. And if you did, consider contributing to my Patreon page. Share it on all your social media platforms. Subscribe, leave a rating, and just remember, it's not that deep.